This is the Nurses Doing GAMSAT Podcast, brought to you by Thankfully GAMSAT. We're here to teach you how to smash the GAMSAT, get into medicine, and become a flippin' great doctor.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast. This is episode 2 of the January Jumpstart. And as you can see, for those watching the video, I have stuck to my word and worn a shirt that Mare could never copy.
So did I. I have worn pink with frills and big shoulders. So I didn't think you would be copying my big frilly shoulders today.
There you go. And we're in the new year now as well. So how's everyone's New Year's resolutions coming along? All right. Hopefully GAMSAT study was one of them and doing this. So we're 6 days in. Mary, have you set any resolutions?
I have, I don't really have resolutions. I have goals, but that's like the same thing, right? But I always start on my goals before the new year because I don't want it to feel like a New Year's resolution. So like in November, started a very new exercise routine and have started doing stuff like a little bit earlier. What about you?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of goals, and I agree. I kind of work on it between that Christmas, New Year's period, and then get started on it straight away. It's like do little bits because we're really on holidays then, but kind of get the ball rolling on it. I don't usually wait, and so hopefully the momentum carries through, and usually it does.
Totally.
Yeah,
but I think if people are just starting their GAMSAT journey at the beginning of January, there's still plenty of time. If you act quickly and you do a lot, there is enough time to be studying. And I've helped countless students who have started in this like January time. So like, you know how that old saying where it's like, when's the best time to plant the tree? Well, it was 20 years ago. Or it's now, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what we're doing this January Jumpstart now. And just to kind of give you a recap, if you've missed it, it's a 4-part series helping you to jumpstart your GAMSAT preparation for March or maybe September, depending on when you're doing it. And this is the second episode. In the first episode, we talked about time management. So how do you create the time for GAMSAT study if you're doing full-time work or shift work, or maybe you've got uni? And we gave you some practical techniques. We also changed your mindset around it. We introduced you to something called time bending and gave you a couple of really practical techniques. And today we're going to kind of go to the next step of that process. And we're going to talk about, oftentimes nurses and healthcare professionals, they come to us and they have a lot of doubt about, whether they're good enough for this. Can they actually get into medicine? Are they smart enough, in inverted commas? And, that might kind of present itself just like that. Or maybe they've been studying for a little bit and they're not improving. And so they're wondering, something's not working. Is it me? Right. And so we're going to be talking about that today. And I wanted to kind of kick it off with a bit of a story from one of our past boot campers, Ashley. She was a nurse from the bush, and she had done the GAMSAT a couple of times before coming to us. And so she had there was a lot going on for her. She'd changed jobs. She had a difficult job at one point, and she changed. She had a house was broken into. And she was attempting to prepare for the GAMSAT throughout. She did it a couple of times, and the score really went nowhere, despite all the effort that she put in. I think she even may have had a tutor at one point. And so when she came to us, she was really doubting herself. Is she good enough? Is she worthy, in inverted commas? Is this a sign of, I've struggled with GAMSAT, can I actually do this? And we helped her work on her kind of mindset and self-belief, but also practical kind of strategies for study. And the very next year, on her first attempt with us, she got into the University of Notre Dame in Fremantle. So she was very pleased with that result. And we're going to be talking to you today about some of those changes that she made and what you can potentially do as well.
The funny thing about Ash was that you can't make the practical changes in the study that you're doing until you have that mindset shift. Because if you don't believe that you're ever going to get in, why would you change things? Because you're not going to get in no matter what you do. So it's this like double-edged sword. But as you were talking about Ash, I actually thought about Bailey, who came to us. She was actually working in the hospital, not as a nurse, but in hospital admin. And she actually sat the UCAT twice by herself. She sat the GAMSAT 3 times on her own, always doing the same thing. She never got over 60. The year that she then finally committed to the boot camp, because she was like, something's got to change.
And it was more the mindset stuff that she really needed to work on.
She really did. But obviously the mindset, like what you're saying, but the mindset allows you to change the practical strategies. And we will, I think in the next podcast that we're recording, we're going to be talking about practical strategies, particularly in section 3. But if you don't have the mindset shift and you truly don't believe in your soul that it's possible, and that not just that it's possible for other people, that it's possible for you, and that you are smart enough, and that, you know, it's going to happen, then you're always kind of going to sabotage or do the wrong things or choose the wrong program or do something wrong. So today's episode is so important to allowing you to make those changes. And it's exciting. Like Bailey, on her first attempt with us, ended up getting a 70, getting straight into University of Wollongong, which was her number one preference. And to think that that was her 6th attempt to get in. First one with us helping her. But, you know, you've got to have that ability to move and change. Like I said to her when she first joined got in, I was like, I wish you had come to me, you know, at that first sitting or at that second sitting, at least, you know, after the first one didn't work, because she's such a good person and she's so, like, I love Bailey. She is just meant to be a doctor, and I could see that in her. And I'm sure there's many people that resonate with that, like lots of doctors or friends or family are like, I can see you as a doctor. You need to be a doctor. And you're like, yeah, if only I could do this goddamn exam. So, like, we've got to change this feeling or this kind of mindset around it's too hard. I can't do it. No matter what I do, I'm not going to get in.
And to do that, we kind of need to shift your thinking around the GAMSAT. So to reframe kind of how you think about it. Now, there's a couple of ways that we're going to talk about doing that today. The first one is to actually understand what the GAMSAT is testing, right? Because a lot of people end up treating it like a university science exam. They just cram a whole bunch of science topics. They're like, I need to learn the science knowledge and I need to apply the science knowledge. But that's uni stuff, right? That's not what the GAMSAT's testing. Like, sure, you need to have some of the sciences, but it's not a knowledge-based test, right? It is a skills-based test, all right? And so that means that how you study needs to shift, because if you're studying the wrong way, no matter what you do, you're going to feel like you're getting nowhere. And then that's when people start to doubt themselves. They start to wonder, am I smart enough? Am I good enough? I mean, I know the sciences, but I can't answer the GAMSAT science questions. Right?
Let me give you an analogy
so it becomes more about developing the skills that are being tested in this unusual exam. Would you agree with that, Mare?
Let me give them an analogy. Let me give it to them. I always think about, like, going into the Olympics as a cyclist. Like, you can read books about bikes. You can know where the chain goes, where the handlebars are, what's the best type of seat. But if you don't know how to ride a bike, and to get into the Olympics, you don't just need to know how to ride a bike. You need to know how to be the best competitor in that skill. And so sometimes it's like the 1 centimeter changing of your butt position changes the airflow that gives you the extra 3 seconds or 3 milliseconds that, you know, changes history, because that's the difference between, you know, a gold medal and a bronze medal, or a gold medal and a no medal. And so it's not just about reading the books and knowing about the bike. It's not about knowing only how to ride a bike. It's about competing with the best in the world to get the highest score. And that's all the little intricate details about how to do the skills and how to implement those skills in the best possible way.
Yeah, and so in the next episode, we're going to be talking about section 3 in a lot more detail. But just to give you an overview of each section, and obviously in future episodes of this podcast, we're going to be talking about each section and pulling it apart and going into lots of detail. But just to give you an overview of how that works, how this kind of skills-based thinking works in each section. In section 1, right, that's the poetry, the drama, the fiction, the non-fiction, right? People often go in there going, I need to know about Emily Dickinson, or I need to know about literature. But that's not what it's about, right? That's not what they're testing. You don't need to know the whole book. You won't know the book, in fact. They're going to throw in passages from texts you've never seen before and could never have seen. And so it's about being able to interpret the nuances and the implicit meanings of complex passages. And that's a skill, right? That's a skill that you need to work on and develop over time. Section 2, again, it's not about being able to know all the facts about all the things going on. Rather, it's the skill of being able to think about a topic in a kind of critical and deep way, and then be able to articulate that in writing. So again, that's a skill, and people mess it up by trying to memorize bits and pieces and then cramming it together. And ACER actually know what's going on when you do that. That they actually warn people not to do it in their guide, in their info booklet. So rather, it's about the skill of being able to think about a topic, pull it apart, get to the nuances, and really express that well. And then thirdly, you've got the science section, which again, we're going to go into more depth in the next episode, but just to give you a brief overview, it is about using what are referred to as GAMSAT reasoning skills, right? Not memorizing sciences. You do need to know some sciences, but what's going to get you the high scores are those reasoning skills. And this is being able to pull apart and work with and use particular different techniques and strategies to work through the passages that they'll give you. And again, the section 3 question stems or the stimulus material are going to be all sorts of random things, half of which you've never seen before, no matter how much study you do. And this is what throws people when they get into the GAMSAT, where they're like, oh, I've done all the practice questions, I know what to expect. And they go in there like, oh my God, the GAMSAT's changed, everyone. No, it hasn't changed. It's as it always is. There's only, as I like to say, there's only one thing you can expect to come up. And that's the unexpected, right? It's a little funny when you say it like that, but it's 100% true. You don't know what kind of questions they're going to put in section 3 or the other sections, but it's about having that skill of being able to see it, pull it apart, and work with what you're given. So again, that's a skill, right? So let's talk about the mindset shift around that, right? The learning skills versus kind of inherent intelligence.
Yeah, because I feel like some people feel like it should just come to them, and like either I'm smart enough or I'm not smart enough. And the reality is everybody's been learning skills for their whole life. You didn't come out of your mother's womb walking and talking and being an adult and make yourself a cup of coffee and a gin and tonic in the afternoon. Like, no, you have to learn skills your entire life. And sometimes I feel like as adults, we forget how to learn skills because we feel like it should just come to us, and it's either I'm smart enough or I'm not smart enough. Right? And so if you really think about some of the skills that you've been like learning your entire life, particularly as a nurse, like Tom, you tell me, what are some of the skills that nurses are using every day that they would have had to have learned?
I think the one that really stands out is cannulation.
Oh, yeah. Who knows how to do that, like, before you see patients?
I remember learning that as a medical student on dummies, right? Or pig skins, and you do it, you put it in, you nail it, you're like, yeah, high fives. But then you go to a real patient, an actual human being. And I remember the first time I did it, like my hand was shaking. I was a medical student, and this guy had come in. He was mending a fence, and he cut the back of his hand. And we were in the ED, and he was waiting a long time. And so I said, hey, can I help this man? And the doctor said, yeah, get all the equipment, get it all together. He kind of gave me the go ahead. I went ahead, And to stitch up the wound, I had to put in some local anesthetic. Well, actually, no, we're talking about something else now. But
Yeah.
but in terms of cannulas, that's another story for another day. So let's talk about cannulas, yeah. And then you actually go to an actual person, and the veins move on you, right? Or you go straight through the vein, or the patient moves, or your hands are shaking, and it is just it's difficult at first. But now, I'm sure every nurse listening to this, you can get it done with a coffee in one hand, a cannula in the other one, while talking on the phone as well with your shoulder.
Dehydrated patient, no problems. Just get it in there, you know. Yeah, but that's because of the skill and the techniques that you're doing, and not just the practice. You got to learn the techniques before you practice, because if you don't know what you're doing, no one's giving you that cannula, and that patient is not going to be happy. Yeah. So you got to learn the techniques.
I'll finish off that story I was saying at the end, because there was a separate story. I think it's a good one anyway.
You're talking about cannulating and something else. Okay, getting
the man with the cut in the back of his hand. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, in terms of learning a skill versus just inherent kind of intelligence, they're two different things. Like, everybody knows maybe someone in their life that isn't so bright, isn't maybe the sharpest tool in the tool shed, but they know how to drive fine, and they know how to cook and look after themselves, because these are all skills that they've learned over time, and you don't have to be smart to learn a skill. And so when people are saying or feeling like maybe I'm not smart enough, then the first thing that I like to say is, like, to learn a skill, once you've articulated once that skill is, then anyone can learn a skill. That is not something that you need to be smart to do. You just got to know the right technique. And so putting yourself in a situation where you're learning the right techniques with the right skills, that's what's important.
Yeah, and you can really break this down in a GAMSAT relevant way, right? We can really break it down to the specific skill. You see how it's done, then you attempt it yourself. You get feedback on that, you make adjustments and improvements, and you keep going. And that's how you learn any skill, and that applies to the GAMSAT as well.
Absolutely.
And to give you an example, a great one is Anarchy. You'll hear from her a little bit later in the series as well. She had no science background, so she was a nurse. And you might think a nurse has a science background, but no, it's anatomy and physiology, none of which comes up in the GAMSAT. So she had no chemistry, physics, or a little bit of biology. And so she did the GAMSAT, and I think she got like a 35 overall, 37, something like that. But then she focused a lot on the reasoning skills, section 3, right? And she had learned a lot of skills in her time as a full-time working nurse. She also had a small child at the time, and she honed in on the reasoning skills. As I said, one skill at a time, and then combining them, and then getting the feedback and continuing to work on it. And as a result, she increased her Section 3 score by something like 13 points and got herself into the University of Flinders Medical School the very next year.
That was her number one preference.
It's incredible what's possible, because, again, she's studying in a way that's actually relevant to the GAMSAT. Because she's studying, focusing, yes, some of the science topics, yes, but then also the skills that are really being tested here. And again, she was able to learn, she was able to grow and adapt to the environment with those new skills.
So adapting to the environment is actually a very good point that you raise, because another thing that I see with people, and, I've spoken to thousands of people sitting in the GAMSAT over the last 18 years, is the concept of fixed versus growth mindset. And I feel like, in fact, I'm going to do a little exercise. When I ask most people, do you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? Tom, what do you think most people say?
I can now say they have a growth mindset.
Right? Because it kind of sounds cool, and it sounds like, of course,
I'm into growth. Be growing, right? That's the right answer.
Yeah, right? And in fact, to anyone listening right now, I want you to think, do you have a fixed or a growth mindset about the GAMSAT right now? Just hold that thought. You don't have to tell anyone right now, but hold that thought. Let me now explain what a fixed mindset is and what a growth mindset is. Because a fixed mindset is someone that has very kind of black and white thinking. It's either a yes or a no. It's a right or a wrong. It's a like I'm smart enough or I'm not smart enough. And, it's like very arbitrary. You choose one of two and that's the way it is and it's unchangeable. If you're not smart enough, you're never going to be smart enough and that's it. And if you are smart enough, you can do what you want and that's it. A growth mindset is someone that thinks in a way that enables you to always be finding the solution. So if I use that example of being smart enough, maybe you're not smart enough right now, but I know how to learn and I can become smart enough. So it's a problem solving, challenging the paradigm kind of way of thinking. And so when students come to me, which often happens, and they've got a little bit of a mindset block of, I don't know if I can do this. And I say, but do you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? And they say growth mindset. I say, okay, well, let's implement that now, because if you don't know if you can do this, let's go and find a way. Let's go and take a more problem solving approach that maybe you can't do it on your own and you need a little bit of help, and that's okay. You don't get a certificate at the end to say you did the GAMSAT with no help, therefore you're better than everybody else. No one gives a shit, right? Like, just get in. No one even cares about your GAMSAT score when you're in medical school. No one is saying, what's your physics abilities like and what did you get in the GAMSAT?
Yeah.
Literally
Or
no
which
one
uni you
answers
went
that.
to.
No, they're all like, holy crap, we're in medical school all together, and everyone's thinking the same thing. How do I get through medical school now?
Yeah, when you're a doctor and there's a patient there in front of you, they don't go, stop, what was your GAMSAT score before you saved my life? Or which uni did you go to? Right.
Never. They don't care. They're just like, you're a doctor, please help me. I'm going through probably one of the most challenging things in my life, and you are a specialist and you know way more about this than I do. Please help me. And so what I say to most people is that if you are ever feeling that you are a little bit stuck, you don't know how to get unstuck, this isn't for you, or you start to question, is it too hard? I want you to start to step into that growth mindset to say, I can do hard things. I know I can get unstuck. Maybe I need a bit of help with it and I need to find who can help me. And whether that's Tom or I, whether that's somebody else, it's the growth mindset that's going to make you, one, a better nurse, because you need to do that in your nursing career as well, but two, a better doctor. Because that growth mindset, that problem solving way of thinking is what you need as a doctor.
Yeah.
With that, I also like to think about GPA, because GPAs are a very, very interesting kind of way of assessing whether somebody is quote unquote smart enough to do the GAMSAT, because the universities tell you what GPA you need to get into medical school. So for most unis, and it's a little bit different for different universities and different people's situations, but most unis, like if you've got above a 5.5 GPA, they have anointed you as smart enough. Yes, you can do this, you can be a doctor. The interesting thing is that if you are not a standard domestic CSP student, a Commonwealth-sponsored student, there's different GPAs. So for rural students or ATSE students or whatever, there is a different standard that they set, which tells me that even the 5.5 GPA is just an arbitrary rule that they kind of just plucked out of nowhere, and it doesn't actually mean that you're smart enough or not smart enough. So GPAs don't even matter. They're not even a fantastic way of assessing whether you are quote unquote smart enough. It's just that they needed to set a rule. So if you meet the standard, if you're above 5.5-ish, then yay, the uni say you're smart enough. If you don't meet that rule and you are below a 5.5, well, guess what? All you need to do is get a growth mindset and say, how do I improve that? How do I change that? And become a problem solver and find a different solution. And in fact, we will do a podcast episode exclusively on GPAs, because that is such
It's a big topic,
kind of topic to talk about. But what I love about it is, sometimes people say the thing like past scores predict future performance. And what I love about that is that Deakin University study. You know a little bit more. Why don't you talk about the study, Tom?
Yeah, in 2022, Deakin University in Australia did a study to compare who does the best in a medical degree based on your undergrad degree. So they looked at people's scores in their actual medical degree and looked at which undergrad degrees did they do. And they found that people with a health-based or health-related degree outperformed the science students. So nurses, physios, OTs, AMBOs, those types of
Pharmacists.
health degrees outperformed the biomed students and the med science students in the actual medical degree. Now, there's nothing against the biomed and med science students, but we're just letting you know that often nurses are the ones that doubt themselves. But when you actually get in there, you outperform. You do much better, right? So you are smart enough. You can do it. And so the key is to implement that problem-solving growth mindset to solve the problem of potentially your GPA, whatever challenges you might be having at the moment with the GAMSAT.
No challenge is so big that you can't get through it. And in fact, I want to kind of get people to start really doing this because I feel like every single person has gone through challenges in their life. And sometimes when a new challenge comes up, we think like, this is the biggest thing I've ever had to do. And this is going to be the thing that breaks me. And I'm never going to be able to. And we come up with all of these excuses in our heads because our brains are not designed to help us to grow. They're designed to keep us safe. And to keep us safe, that means that it wants to keep us in a very predictable, certain environment. And doing things that are outside your comfort zone is not predictable and it's not safe for your brain. So it wants to keep us small into this, like where we are right now. And that's not where you want to be. So sometimes we need to get out of that comfort zone and we need to remember some of the things that we've done in the past that once made us very uncomfortable. But now we're like, oh, we did that. Okay, we survived that. So what I'd love is for you to get your phone out or maybe a pen and paper and just to write down some of the hard stuff that you've done in your life. Like your undergrad, that was probably hard. Write that down. For me, I gave birth. Anyone that's a mother, you better write down giving birth. And if the birth was easy, then the first 12 weeks of your kid's life, I can guarantee you that was not an easy transition, okay? I had 36-hour birth. That was not an easy day and a half of my life, I can tell you that much. And so, for you, Tom, you came here as a young child. You spoke no English. You literally changed countries. That's a hard thing that you went through. And at the time, I'm sure you struggled. I'm sure that there were some challenges there. You would be writing that down. And I want people to write down the hard thing or things. In fact, let's make a challenge. Let's say 15 hard things. And I'm saying 15 things because I feel like everyone can kind of come up the top of their head. I did this, maybe 2 or 3 things that were hard in their life. But I want you to think back every year of your life and think back, what's something hard I did that year? And I want you to acknowledge it because every single one of those things probably required you to learn some new skills to get through it. And then at the end, I want you to write, if I can learn this, I can learn anything. Or if I can do this, I can do anything. And I want everybody to understand this is within your reach. You can do this, and you've probably done harder stuff in your life. You just forget about it once it's done. That's within your comfort zone and it doesn't feel like struggle, but at the time it was. What's 1 or 2 things that you've done, Tom, that feels like a struggle?
Well, okay, so one of them was I did a study abroad year and decided to travel to Central and South America. And I got a one-way ticket to Guatemala. And 3 months later, I had to return from Peru, and I had to make my way in between those 2 places in 3 months. If you know anything about it, that there's a lot of stuff in between. And so I was very intimidated by the idea of going just to Guatemala and not knowing where I was going. I didn't have any.
You
I
were
think I
young.
had accommodation
You
for
were
the
20.
first little bit booked, and I just had one of those Lonely Planet books back in the day, stick books, and I'd heard all the in America from going from California to Guatemala, you hear all kinds of stories, and so it was kind of intimidating. I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do, and it was pretty scary at the time. And just the whole trip after I booked it, I was like, oh, what did I get myself into here? But then having gone through it as a result, at the end of that, I felt a lot better about my ability to survive through just about anything because I had a whole bunch of adventures along the way, let me tell you.
Food
And I'm here to tell the
poisoning.
tale. And yeah, that was definitely one of them. Another one was, I don't want to say GAMSAT because I think that would be a bit of a cop out, but I'd say a challenging one would be.
I've got one for you. You were diagnosed with osteoporosis at 37.
Oh yeah,
That
that's
is
right. So
very, very young.
yeah, there's a bit of backstory to that one, I guess. Yeah, so osteoporosis, for those who don't know, is a condition where your bones become really brittle, and they start to break from things like shaking someone's hand or sneezing, you break a rib, or you can fall over and do it too, which generally happens to women after menopause because menopause drops estrogen. Estrogen kind of protects the bones. Without that, bones tend to get weaker. And so, but there I was, a 37-year-old male, and I was breaking all these bones, and I had a bone scan, and they said, well, yep, you've got osteoporosis. And that was a bit of a shock to me because I've always been a healthy person, and I thought I kind of knew my body. And then they told me that I had 2 crush fractures in my spine as well, and that was a shock to the system because I was like, wow, okay, I could break my spine, and how bad could that get? And so I had to kind of figure that out, and my doctors were suggesting taking these epic medications that have some potentially serious side effects, and you can't really take, or you're on them for the rest of your life, but then you're kind of stuck, and it's not a pleasant experience. And so I kind of had to. That was a scary moment, and I felt like, oh, well, I don't have any option. Probably the same way people feel with the GAMSAT. They feel stuck. It feels overwhelming, so big. What do I do? It feels too big to kind of conquer. But then one step at a time, I started looking into it. I started understanding how the bones work. I used I decided to take a problem-solving approach to it, and I started to understand how the bones work, what makes them stronger, what makes them weaker, and I figured out that you can strengthen your bones without medications by doing very specific actions and eating particular things and taking particular supplements. And so I started doing that. And within 6 months, I started to turn around my bone strength. And so my endocrinologist was very surprised about that. And I've continued to do that since. And now my bones are almost back to normal, which is almost unheard of. Right, almost unheard because people generally just have that fixed mindset of, hey, this is how it is. I just got to take the meds, and the meds don't even do that much for many people. Obviously, you need to speak to your doctor. This isn't medical advice. All the disclaimers, but a lot of people can help themselves with the right kinds of activities to strengthen their bones. So that was a incredible learning experience that kind of changed me and changed the way I think about our bodies as
And it
well.
was hard. This is the point, Tom. You didn't start that journey saying, I have all the answers. I know exactly what's going to happen. And I can say in, 3.4 months, this is going to be the bone density. No, what it was a challenge that you brought a growth mindset to. You said, I am not willing at this age of my life to take medications. It's got all of these things. And we're not dissing the medications. For some people, that's absolutely the right thing to do. But the point is, you then said, okay, with my growth mindset, what do I need to learn? What do I need to do? What do I need to change? And then you consistently showed up and did the work. That's working out. You work out 5 times a week, big sessions at the gym. You're deadlifting 160 kilos. Like, that's incredible for somebody to be able to do. Like, you've made these changes but it was one step at a time, and you can do hard things. Now, I'm not saying that anybody listening right now is like, oh my God, I haven't done anything like that. No, but everybody's done other hard things in their lives. And so I want, even you, Tom, when I said, tell me a couple of hard things you've done, to me, that like instantly came to my head. You just weren't even going to mention it because you were like,
I've
oh, that's
already done it,
nothing
right?
now.
Because I've already done it. It's almost like feels like a done
That's
deal.
the
And that's probably what
point.
happens to a lot of people too, right?
This
We
is
forget
the
about these hard
point.
times.
Yeah, you forget about when you were 37 and you walked out of that, doctor's consultation with your endocrinologist, and you were just like broken. You were just like, holy
Literally
crap.
and metaphorically, yes.
Literally. Literally and emotionally broken.
Yeah. Broken
But
bones.
like, honestly, I feel like that's where a lot of people are. And you need to remember that every single person listening here, no one has had an easy life. Nobody has had an easy, carefree, no problems life. You can do hard, bloody things.
Yeah, so that's an exercise. Just to kind of recap, that's an exercise we'd like you to do as part of the Jumpstart is to get out a pen and paper or get out your phone or whatever and write down 15 of these hard things that you've done and that you've overcome.
In fact, let's get everybody to share that into the Slack group. So if you're a member of our Slack group, fantastic, jump in. Slack, just to explain you, we would do this on Facebook, but we don't actually want to encourage people to jump into Facebook right now because we are in peak GAMSAT season. So we want to encourage you to have something that's just GAMSAT focus, just focus on the January Jumpstart. And so we've made a private Slack group that's like just a little community group. You can download Slack for free on your phone. It's literally costs nothing to join, but you're going to be in a like-minded community. Please share one or two of those 15 that you're most proud of. And the one that makes you go, if I can do that, I can do the GAMSAT.
Yeah. And Maria and I will be in that Slack group. Commenting and supporting you guys. Now, if you're already part of the Jumpstart, you'll have access to it. If you're not, what you need to do is go to thankflipgamsat.com/jumpstart and register for the Jumpstart. You'll be invited to join the Slack group. Now, if you're listening to this after January and the Jumpstart is over, head on over to that link anyway, and we'll give you some other kind of goodies and we can get you into a different group. So that's thankflipgamsat.com/jumpstart.
It's so cool. And we've already got people doing stuff and things in that Slack group. So it's amazing. It's great to have a like-minded community. I know heaps of people that I've spoken to that are nurses that are like, I can't tell anyone at work. I don't want people to know. I don't want this to affect my career. And so sometimes just being like in a group of people that aren't your people and seeing other people making progress encourages you to stay on track as well. And look, celebrating small wins really builds momentum. It boosts confidence. There's just so much goodness in there. Go and enjoy it with us. We want you
there. And that post that from that exercise, but then also any insights you've gotten from this episode as well. And we'll be in there. We'll be giving out some freebies, awesome GAMSAT freebies. We'll be doing a Q&A in there as well and supporting you guys along as well.
I'm kind of expecting somebody to get curious about what you did with the osteoporosis.
I'm happy to share it.
We are speaking with medical professionals here. They're going to go, okay, tell me exactly what you did. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. So tell us, Tom, what's the next episode going to be in the Jumpstart in this series?
Yeah, awesome. So the next episode is one that most people are very excited about. It's about Section 3. All right, we're going to talk to you about how to tackle those Section 3 questions step by step, even if you don't have a science degree. So we'll talk about this whole reasoning skills thing. So what do you do if you're faced with a question you don't know anything about? Right, so we'll also talk about some of the science topics, but we'll more so talk about this kind of the key factor that makes all the difference, the reasoning skills, how to develop those, what they are, and we'll even give you access to some sample questions where you can practice and see how it works as well. So that's coming up. That's going to be a great one. So make sure you subscribe to this. And also, if you want to get any of the links, we'll put a link to the Deacon study and a couple other bits and pieces in the show notes. If you want to get the show notes, go to thankfullygamsat.com/episode 2, and we'll have them in there as well as a transcript and a few bits and pieces as well.
I want everybody to kind of, the key takeaway to be that you can do this. You are not so special that this is beyond you, okay? You are special, but in other ways. You're smart enough, you're kind enough, you're diligent enough. You just need to focus on the right skills, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about next week, or next episode, I should say. But, like, I'm just excited for this new round of nurses, health professionals, ambos, physios, pharmacists, whatever the hell you're doing now to get into med school. You can absolutely do it 100%.
Excellent. And we can't wait to see your insights in the Slack as well.
Tell me. Yes, tell me everything. I'm like a nosy mother here. I want to know it all. And I want to encourage too.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks, Marie. That was it.
Thanks,
That's
Tom.
the session. We'll see you guys next time. And have a good one.
Bye. Hey, I have a cool gift for you, just for listening to the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast. We do some of our best work in our Facebook group called, you guessed it, Nurses Doing GAMSAT. It's free to join, and every day we're sharing actionable guides, tips and tricks, and really just how to smash the exam and get into medicine. You can join today by searching Nurses Doing GAMSAT on Facebook. Thanks for listening to another episode, and I'll see you next time.